again, Ms.
decision
Lang, I don't mean to
that
interrupt you, but it's a simple answer to a question. Do you agree that women should have the right to plan their own future?
women should have a right to plan their own future, making sure
Their
that
own
they
future.
consider consequences of
Okay.
their lives.
Okay. So don't you think that it would be denying a woman a right to plan her future if we take away her access to free non-abortion contraceptives?
I think that contraceptives actually are not the best way to go about teaching people. Like, I think abstinence is better
You do think
route. And I
abstinence?
think if you're talking about women who are not children, who are more responsible, I think that contraceptives that's okay. However, if I know a lot of people who use contraceptives, they get pregnant and they don't want to get pregnant. But the
Right.
thing is that that woman has a responsibility for her actions. She had sex with someone and she realizes that there could be further implications. The life that is inside of her body should not be terminated
Okay.
because of her decision.
I understand. So you think that abstinence is the best solution?
Yes,
for this?
definitely.
Okay, well, it's funny that you say that because the U.S. government thinks that abstinence is a good solution for unwanted pregnancies, AIDS, and cervical cancer, but, and the government also funds it to a tune of around $178 million a year, but the only problem is that study after study shows abstinence education has no effect on the rates of premarital sex or STD infection. Perhaps that's because, as a report from Henry Waxman in 2004 showed that 80% of federally funded abstinence programs contain false or misleading information about sex and reproductive health. Because they don't focus on keeping teens safe, they reinforce traditional gender roles and ensure that girls remain pure. So,
Actually, I was reading some statistics as well regarding abstinence and also
Thank you, Ms.
schools.
Glenn. There was no question posed, but we appreciate your response. I just want to further from what Senator Landau was discussing. Numerous sources, including I want to just continue on what Senator Landau was discussing. Yeah, numerous sources, including the Health Behavior News Service, comes to the same conclusion that sex education, which includes education on contraceptives, are effective in decreasing the unintended pregnancy rate, especially among adolescents. It's important to note that Planned Parenthood, which receives Title X funding, offers education pertaining to contraceptives, thereby reducing the unintended pregnancy rate. Furthermore, Senator Shelby State of Alabama, which utilizes abstinence education, which you, again, are a proponent of, has a staggeringly high unintended pregnancy rate of 47.4%. So they could certainly use the more effective sex education approach of teaching contraceptives as opposed to the ineffective method in place of abstinence. Now you talked a lot about abortion in your speech. As we heard earlier from Secretary Sebelius, Title X does not fund abortion. So how is your testimony today relevant to the discussion of whether or not we should fund Title X?
Well, that's actually a common misconception. I know that Title X funding against the law go directly to abortions, but they're actually indirectly going to abortions. The money coming from Title X goes to the Planned Parenthood organization, and that allows them to use those money for things such as operational costs. However, that frees up other money to go straight to abortion. So actually, these taxpayers who do not want their money going to funding abortion, actually 67%
Thank you, Ms. Glantz.
do
Now I
not
have a
want their
question
money
for
going
you.
to abortion.
So I just have a few questions. I appreciate your responses. Are you supportive of the government providing funding to welfare so that low-income people do not have to pay for the food?
Yes, I am very
Are you supportive of the government funding public education so that people of all economic backgrounds can attain a free education?
yes.
Well, all right, I'm glad you came to the same conclusion that I did, but using your logic, the government, if we follow your logic, the government should not, fund these programs because these programs would free up money for people to buy guns and drugs, right? They don't have to spend money on food and education. They have more money to buy guns and drugs. So with your logic, should this committee be discussing also how to cut welfare and education programs so that we're not freeing up money for Americans to buy guns and drugs?
I believe you're going a little off.
Well,
the
I'm just
topic that
using
we're discussing.
I'm using your logic of indirect funding. I'm creating another example which uses the same logic that you're providing for how indirect funding to abortions is somehow through Title X. Because with your logic, any government action that we take that provides help and resources to people and therefore saves people money could potentially and theoretically have a remote chance and slight, minor chance of freeing up other money that they could potentially, theoretically, be spending on guns and drugs. Isn't that correct?
You're saying this is a minor potential theoretical.
Right. I'm trying to portray the unlikeliness of your theory.
I think we should discuss the funding of Title X
All right.
and how it's going directly to Planned Parenthood and how we feel that this is not
Thank you, Ms. Lance. I I was just trying to compare your logic and how if we
I believe you're going
the
a little
dangers.
farther
Thank
than
you.
me.
I'm sure that my constituents back home in Iowa are thrilled that I don't follow your logic, or they'll be out of public education and welfare as well. So I'm sure that they believe that I'm not using the logic. Now, Ms. Glantz, another point to add on with regards to you talked about this. So even if we give your argument or rationality any credence, are you aware that the Buffett Foundation gives money to Planned Parenthood to be used solely for abortion? The repeal of Title X would have no impact on Planned Parenthood's ability to perform abortions, since this money is designated by the donors for solely abortions. If anything, the repeal of Title X would create a situation where women would not be able to get access to contraceptives, but could get access to free abortions. More unintended pregnancies, more abortions, which would be a worse scenario. Plus, women would not be getting the benefits of Planned Parenthood. So what I'm asking you today is, how is the repeal of Title X going to stop these abortions if organizations like Buffett Foundation give money for the use of solely abortion to Planned Parenthood?
Well, I think you addressed something important before that I had already mentioned, and I think we maybe need to clear that up again, about how you were saying how the funding was not going to abortions and how it was going to other services. But I think we need to make it very clear, especially for you to make an informed decision on the matter, that this funding, although it is not going directly to abortions, it's freeing up other money
Again, as I
to go
thank you, but again, as the Buffett Foundation proves, there are organizations that give money to Planned Parenthood only for the use of abortion. So basically, even without Title X funding, abortions would still exist. My point is to show that repealing Title X funding would not solve this problem that you hope to solve. Now, one last thing before we run out of time. You would consider yourself pro-life, correct? Well, we've heard about all the essential and even life-saving services that Planned Parenthood provides through Title X funding. We've heard about breast cancer screenings for 830,000 women yearly, and cervical cancer screenings for about 1 million. We've heard about STD tests. We've heard about STD treatment that has occurred, and that these programs, which programs that Planned Parenthood offers, are only attainable to these low-income people because they are free. Now, seeing that you are pro-life, how can you hold the position that we should rescind funding for these life-saving programs like breast cancer screening?
Well, I believe that there are alternatives. I think that the government, I know it is funding Planned Parenthood at the moment and these services, instead maybe it could allocate its funding towards other organizations.
But you're not
that
addressing the
provide
fact that Planned
these same
Parenthood provides
services.
these life-saving services,
Right,
and
but
without
Planned
them,
Parenthood
people would die. People would not have
Planned
access to
Parenthood is
them.
also killing people as well.
All right,
Unfortunately.
thank you, Ms. Glantz. Thank you for your time, and thank you for enlightening us. I'm glad I had the opportunity to debunk many of my opponents' views regarding Planned Parenthood. Now you may be excused. We're now going to call Ms. Aberbrook as representative for Planned Parenthood. She will give a brief opening statement to the committee, followed by questioning. She will then be questioned by Senator Hutchinson, followed by Senator Pryor. So, Ms. Aberbrook, please welcome.
Thank you for having me. I would just like to give a very brief statement. I read statistics all day long about how Planned Parenthood has been just extremely beneficial to women and men, teenagers all around, and I'm saddened by the fact that the opponents to Title X funding are protecting women's rights and are completely disregarding women's choices, and just saddened by that.
So now, Senator Hutchinson, you will please begin. You have approximately 5 minutes for questioning.
Hello everyone, I'm Senator Hutchinson from Texas. I'd first like to address everybody about how I feel on the Title X debate. I stand by my fellow Republican senators in that I am not in support of Title X funding and thus Planned Parenthood funding. Even though many have stated that the federal funding for Planned Parenthood goes only towards family planning, this funding frees up money for more abortions. The government is therefore indirectly funding abortions, which is contradicting the whole point of the Hyde Amendment. And to make matters worse,